Greetings, beloveds. How to identify market leaders after a general market sell-off. That's what we're going to discuss. But first, let me greet you in the love light of the one infinite creator. All right. So this is beginning of May 2025, and we've seen the market already drop about 21% of the highs here. So this has been a huge drop, and lots of stocks have seen even bigger percentage down days and down weeks. So the market's down. So the question becomes, how do you identify fresh leadership? Now, I'm going to take you back to 2023. And in this October period, we'd seen the market drop about 10%. So not as big as the current drop. So from here to here, market was down about 10%. Again, that's a big drop because stocks are going to be down way more than that. So the S&P 500 was down at that time period. And if you take a look at the S&P 500 here, something I want to point out is before that drop, take a look at its relationship to the highs of 2021. You can see that the S&P 500 had failed to break out before this pullback in the market at that time. So I just want to mention that for context. Now compare that with the chart for GE in that time frame, and you'll notice that GE was also down, but not as much, relatively speaking, as the S&P 500. So that's GE, same time period. This is 26th of October 2023. S&P 500, 26th of October 2023. Look at the size of this drop. So look at that size, relatively speaking, and take a look at the size of GE, especially if you consider just the monthly closing. Very small drop. Now again, S&P 500 had failed to break out. I want to point this out because it's going to be relevant in the next minute or so. S&P 500 had failed to break out. So we can see that in 2023. By October of 2023, GE had already cleared its 2021 highs. So right there, it was leadership, even months before that pullback. Now notice if we take a look at its performance relative to the S&P 500. So relative to the S&P 500, you can see GE was outperforming the S&P 500. In fact, was at new highs here as the market was pulling back. So what that told us, and what I'm trying to explain here, is whenever you see a pullback, just like we have a pullback in the current market, the stocks that should be of interest after this pullback are stocks that are trading and are already showing breakout signs. So stocks that are trading here as the market is trading down off the lows. So in other words, the theory here is if the market is going to continue coming off its lows, so in the coming months, if the market is going to be higher, so the market made a low here, if the market is going to be higher in the coming months, then the stocks that are already leading the market right now, they'll end up being the stocks with the highest percentage gain. And that's exactly what we're looking for. Stocks with a higher return. So as GE was dropping here in October of 2023, I sent out an alert to my paid clients. This is October 26, 2023, and G is mentioned here. And I'm saying that if it breaks out above August's 2023's monthly closing high, you want to look at this as a buy candidate. In other words, as soon as you see GE clear this level here, you want to consider that as a signal to buy the stock because of the strength of outperforming the market in that time frame. Now, if we fast forward to the current market environment, this is the breakout I'm talking about. Once we saw that breakout, the stock was effectively a buy, and GE went to see a nice run, more than doubling in the upcoming months within about 11 months or so. So huge return here. And if you compare to this is above, it's quite about 110% gain plus. In relative terms, S&P 500 also did eventually break out. And in relative terms, yes, had a nice run for a general market. Nice run here, but the return here is about 49%. So definitely GE was outperforming. Now, what is interesting is as we see the market drop here in the last couple of months, we are again presented with a similar situation, same stock. So we've seen the market experience this plunge. Now compare that to the monthly chart for, let's take a look at the monthly chart for the S&P 500. So this is the S&P 500. This is where it needs to break out in the coming months if it's going to break out. Now compare this with the monthly chart currently for GE, and you can see that it is already attempting a breakout right there. So what that means, if it clears this breakout here on a monthly basis, if it can clear the monthly closing high from August, which is it's doing right now, then the stock is a buy. In fact, to be honest, that's why I gave out a breakout alert here for subscribers today. for GE. And also I do like the fact that compared to the S&P 500, you can see that the performance against the S&P 500 is already trading at all-time highs. So here, this is definitely a buy with the understanding that as long as the breakout is effective, in other words, as long as the breakout is above the prior monthly closing high from February, then the stock is a go. If the breakout fails in price and you see the stock retreating from this level here, start pulling back, maybe let's say 3% to 8% maximum drop from the breakout level, then you can get out. But as long as it's breaking out, these are the type of stocks that could end up being leadership in a new market if the market is to go back to test recent all-time highs. That's it for now. I am Eric with Mwathe.com. I leave you as I found you, in the love light of the one infinite creator. Go forth rejoicing in the power and in the peace of the one creator. Adonai.